Greetings, Calico fans. This is H.H. Sherman from Sigma Comics, and I'm back with a new video. I know I hadn't done videos in a while. It's just that we've been very busy touring the U.S., so now we have some time to do some more videos. And before I get started on this one, I'm going to go ahead and take a swig from the Calico mug, as I always like to do before I start these videos. So with that, always good. All right, so let's get started. And actually, before we do that, why don't you go ahead and hit that like button on the video and hit the subscribe button, because I think you're going to like what you're going to hear. And also, it helps us in the rating system here, this whole video YouTube algorithm thing. And that's what we want. We want more subscribers, more people hearing about our fight animal abuse through comics message. All right, so let's get started on this video. So the topic here is the Beetle, the Blue Beetle. Okay, this is a movie that just came out, and it's based on a DC character. This is not one of the premier DC characters. Blue Beetle is someone who I knew about growing up. Sort of as a B or C level character, and maybe even on the lower rung than that. But I actually did pick up a couple of his comic books, or at least comic books where he appeared in. And he was an interesting character, very interesting character. Definitely some texture on that character, and that's simply what you get from DC. DC historically has been, you could say, arguably a bit more about substance and story and plot, whereas the Marvel character is a bit more image and rowdy fighting and a lot of sort of drama and conflict. Listen, both are great sort of approaches to comics. So, but this is only to say that even for the lower rung characters like a Blue Beetle, DC was always careful to give that character some grit, grime, and texture, and I really enjoyed DC for that. They've always historically done a good job on their characters, or for the most part, I should say. But anyway, so the movie just came out this week. And I'll be perfectly honest, disclaimer, I did not see it. And typically, I would say 90 to 95% of the time, when I'm about to speak about something, I like to get very informed about what I'm about to speak, what I'm going to speak about. In this case, I'm not necessarily talking about the quality of the video. So that's why I feel myself comfortable. I feel comfortable speaking about this. Really, what I'm talking about is the decision by the creators here on this movie to put out a movie on the Blue Beetle, not the actual Blue Beetle from yesteryear, but the latest incarnation of the Beetle, and putting that out sort of as the first movie that's ever been put out for this character. And I thought that was an interesting move. I sort of disagree with it, because I think if you're going to finally devote time to this character in the big screen, I mean, you can't get any bigger, right, than the silver screen. How is it then that you're going to decide to launch this with the latest incarnation of the title? I mean, this is where this character has the smallest audience. Yeah, just think about the prudence in this, okay? Think about the calculation that went into this, okay? So you have the lowest possible audience that you can have for this character historically, and you're going to turn around, when you do have decades, by the way, of history backlog on this character, but no, you just decide that you're going to forget all of this that is there, remember, and focus on the brand new character. And this character, I don't think it's been around with this particular individual, who's of Latin descent. And to be clear, I'm also, by the way, of Latin descent. So I'm saying this. I'm saying this. I'm interrupting myself. I'm saying this as someone who is Latino, who is very proud and supportive of all Latino projects and creators. Despite this, I just don't think it was a prudent thing. If you have a history, a long history of a character that this company has amassed over time, and then you're going to put out a movie ignoring all this past and solely focusing on this new character here. I just think it's a lost opportunity, and I think it's a very huge loss of opportunity. I don't know, again, why this creative team decided to do this. I'm sure there are reasons, but I just don't think it was a smart decision. When you, at the end of the day, if you have an audience out there that, that's the thing, is even if the character appeared in sort of backup performances, maybe he might appear in an issue of, I don't know, Justice League, maybe somewhere in an issue of Superman or Batman or Green Lantern or something like that through the years, and then had his own title. Probably wasn't successful, but at least he's been around, and there's enough, even though not everyone in sort of the people who are reading comics were familiar with everything that encompassed the Blue Beetle's story, you at least knew of the character. And there were many, many more people in that audience. And to solely focus on the very, very minute audience that exists now, I mean, just think about the just alarming difference in the audience of comic book readers today. Okay, today, circa 2023, okay, versus, I mean, this character goes back decades. This character, if I'm not mistaken, was acquired by DC after purchasing another comic book publisher. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Charleston Comics, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's where this character was originally purchased from by DC, and then that's how they acquired the character, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm pretty sure I'm right on that. You can please correct me in the comments. But again, this is all to say that DC has had this character for quite some time, and I think what's happening in Hollywood and in comics today is that there's sort of there's a noble attempt, I think, to try to do justice for many disenfranchised groups. And again, it's a noble effort. I just think in the rush to do this, prudent decisions become imprudent decisions, right? Or I should say prudent ideas become imprudent decisions. Because I think, the idea to take the Blue Beetle off the shelf and to finally do some justice to the character, I think that's a good idea. The problem is, I don't think that the strategy was the correct one by using, again, the latest incarnation of the character. And yes, it's going to appeal to Latinos, and again, I count myself among them. And yay, hooray, for the DC Comics to put out a character of Latino descent, for the whole representation piece. But I just think to do it for that reason, and just to try to, hit this audience, and Latinos are a growing audience in the U.S. So in that case, okay, I approached this from the comics audience perspective before, and now I'm sort of introducing the Latino and growing Latino audience as part of this discussion. And yes, there's a point that there is a growing Latino audience, and finally, you can say that, well, now there's a character that's representative for the Latino audience. The issue with that is, I think, twofold. One is the just myopic view that somehow, because he's Latino, this massive audience is now going to come. I think there's a possibility that the template for this was Black Panther. Okay, when you look at this, sort of apples to apples, here's this wonderful black character from Marvel Comics called the Black Panther, who does, like the Blue Beetle, have a lot of history behind the character. And of course, Marvel, understanding this, understanding that there has been, quite a bit of a void in the African American community with respect to superheroes, took this character, again, certainly not an A-lister Black Panther. I would consider him a solid B character. And, I'd also throw Iron Man in there as well. Certainly Iron Man was not an A character when he received this movie. But anyway, Marvel decides to put the Black Panther movie out, and it is a magnificent success. And you can say, as a Hollywood exec, well, listen, look at the fantastic numbers they did with the Black Panther. It went into the billions, okay? The thing netted over $1 billion. Well, we have to find more audience to do this. Let's template the success. And I think there's a very good possibility, in fact, there's a strong possibility, that the execs in DC Comics used the Black Panther template. And here's where they're misguided, if that's in fact the template. Okay, here's the misguidance. It was that the Black Panther is a character, again, like Blue Beetle, it's been around for decades. In fact, the Blue Beetle, there's a possibility, I may be wrong in this, but the Blue Beetle character might actually be older than the Black Panther character. So again, these execs are like, well, we got an even older character with more backlog, more history. So this has to be a success. And let's get the Latino audience is a very fast-growing audience in the United States. And, I don't know what the percentages are. Maybe I should have looked this up before I did this video, of the Latino community versus the African-American community audience in the United States. But it's certainly a very significant, sizable audience. And the thing about the Latino audience is that it is, Latin American itself is just massive. There's so many of us that come from lots of different countries. So collectively, you'd have to think that it's just enormous and certainly worth targeting. That said, here's the big misguiding element. Black Panther forever has been a symbol of so many different positive things in the African American community. Even just his name, Black Panther. He most certainly was tied to a struggle and the civil rights movement of the 60s here in the United States. So again, not only with his name, but also, the focus of the character. And this is to say that the African American community has, for decades, felt a very strong tie to the character. Okay, and this is extremely important. When you have a character that you are emotionally invested in, emotionally tied to, and B, you see as representative of a cause that is part of your history in this country, well, that is unequivocally going to resonate and hit much harder and deeper to the people, to the audience. And I think that is the essence of why the movie was so successful, because, wow, it was, not only did they do such a beautiful job with that movie, but they had an audience there that, as they kept going to the theater to watch the movie, because I guarantee you many went back to see it again because that's how good it was, they were, the audience was, they were sharing the experience with family members. Hey, I just saw the Black Panther in the theater, oh my goodness, I was in tears. It was a powerful movie. It was so great. You need to come down and see this, etc., etc. It was a beautiful cultural movement, if you will. Imagine a movement around a movie. That's really what Black Panther was when it came out, and what a beautiful honorary, dignified presentation that Marvel did with that movie. What a great job they did. Hats off to them. And I think that's why they executed well on all fronts on that movie. Conversely, this situation here with the Blue Beetle, no one identified as a Latino with the Blue Beetle. This is only, I mean, how long has this incarnation of the Blue Beetle as Latino, someone please educate me here on this, because I certainly don't. That wasn't the Blue Beetle that I grew up with, in the 80s and 90s reading, or again, indirectly or directly. That wasn't the guy I read as the Blue Beetle. This has to be within the last couple of years, this guy. I didn't even know, frankly, were it not for the previews, I didn't know that the Blue Beetle was Latino. So just on the surface, you have a white, a night and day difference. So I have news for you. This movie's probably not going to make $1 billion. And that's probably news you already know. Again, thank you, DC, for attempting, but this is not how you do that. All right. I think it was a very poor decision. I think the character looks great. The Blue Beetle costume and all that. Again, I haven't seen the movie. And again, this is only, the conversation I'm having here is about the approach. I mentioned this before early in the video. If you're just joining us, the approach, this is what this video is about. It's the approach of DC to finally put this character, this, again, D level character from DC on the silver screen. Again, not a bad decision, probably a good decision, but the manner in which they decided to deploy it, i.e., using a character who has the smallest audience of all the incarnations of the Blue Beetle, the latest one, and with no one who really such a small circulation versus what it was back in the 80s and 90s. If you want to compare what comics did in terms of readership back in the 80s and 90s, you're talking about I don't know what the average comic book was doing, but average A-list comic book, Batman, Spider-Man kind of thing, was doing easily back in the 80s. You were doing close to 1 million a month, so or maybe slightly under that, and that was a steady thing, and certainly went up higher when some of the superstars got on that book, like Todd McFarlane, who I'm a huge fan of. In fact, I'd say Todd McFarlane is my favorite artist of all time. And I'm not alone in that sentiment. Anyway, you'd compare that to now, and it's embarrassing. I mean, it's not even worth stating the numbers. I mean, I think the average successful comic book today is probably maybe in the 80, 70,000 range. It's shockingly and embarrassingly low. So how are you, as a supposedly, a prudent executive, gonna understand this, and then with that knowledge put out a movie with a character who's relatively new, and by character I mean this latest incarnation of the character? It just doesn't make sense. Bad decision by DC. I just think for that reason you're basically right out the gate giving yourself a poor score and a poor opportunity. It's not really a poor opportunity, it's the poor chances. You got a chance, you have, it's the same thing, but you know what I mean. It's like, yes, you're giving the character, the actor, the hero, you're giving them an opportunity finally, but in what condition are you doing this? No, you're setting them up for failure, and that's what I mean. It's they don't really truly have a chance to succeed. You're giving them the opportunity, but you're not giving them the chance to succeed. So I've already contrasted why, the title against another very successful, incredibly successful movie, The Black Panther. Folks, this is not how you do it. You want representation. I think what you do is, you go into the into the massive library that DC and Marvel have, and instead of rehashing a character, dressing them up and putting them out. Now that I'm thinking about this, there might be a chance that they did this, they meaning DC. This character was written, in this latest incarnation as a Latino just to do this. I wouldn't be surprised, given how things are going in comics these days. Think about that for a second. Okay, I was about to end the video just now, but now that I'm thinking about this, as I'm saying it, I'm thinking about it. Imagine taking a character that's existed for generations, and just because you think it's a good idea to change the ethnicity of this character because, hey, Marvel did this to... there was a movie that just came out with an African-American character that did it wonderful. Well, what if we have a Latino character, and by the way, let's just create this new character and make him Latino. And I think that's going to be a good idea, and put it out that way. What a horrendous decision. Just what a poor... if that's how it happened, if this is... I'm not saying this is how it happened, but if this is what prompted DC to change the ethnicity of the Blue Beetle in these recent years for this Latino character, just so that they can, in a couple years, put out this movie. Wow, this is just very, very poor, lazy stuff there that's going on in comics. Whoa, wow, that's embarrassing. No, folks, this is not how you do representation. No, this is not how you do it. There are, years ago, Marvel and DC put out these books. I know it was called the Handbook, Marvel Universe Handbook. And I had, they would sell it in this, it was like a big binder. And you can get, I think it was they sold it in like 100-page increments or something like that. It was a big alphabetic thing. And, they had hundreds of characters, right? I think even thousands. I guess it's thousands. And I am sure that you could have come across a character that already had some kind of legacy, that you could do this. You could do this kind of thing. You didn't have to go and change a character to do this. And this is the type of thing that's happening in these comic book companies. And, it's leading to cultural strife, and it's really unnecessary stuff. The bottom line is you commit an error when you do stuff like this. I don't care if you're left, right, white, black. This is not a political or cultural thing. This is a poor concept right from the gate. You can't do stuff like this and think that you're going to get a following just suddenly, and the thing's going to go blow up like that. I mean, of course, there's always a chance, but I just don't think, we live in such a saturated time with respect to, attention. We have the video games, we have these movies, we have the streaming. There's so many things competing for your attention these days. There's so much saturation, right? And I just think if you really have to have something just beautifully done, a very well written piece of work, it has to look great, it has to have a really substantive platform from which to launch, and well executed, right? Both from the whiteboard in terms of who we're going to target, how we're going to do this, and then the story. Everything just needs to work beautifully. And then you do this, and you do something like this again, potentially, because I don't know if this is how it happened. But wow, that's embarrassing if that's what happened. Anyway, I'm just going to wrap this up because it's disappointing, because this stuff leads to cultural stuff. We already have enough of this, and really it's unnecessary. The bottom line is, if you do stuff like this, you're going to get results like this, right? And it has nothing to do with politics or culture. It's just poor thinking. Okay, you really have to as creators, we have a fundamental responsibility to think substantively and critically about our creative projects and what they do to people. It's an emotional thing. You know, a hero's aspiration, it's inspirational. You know, you're inspired by the character and you're aspired to be, right? So do better, Marvel and DC. Okay, both of you. I'm a huge fan, I always have been, but for the past few years, it's been disappointing. You know, anyway, I don't want to launch into something else. The bottom line is the Blue Beetle's not going to make $1 billion. There you have it. And actually, let me take another swig of this thing. Thank you for listening to this, and I think it's important to have these discussions because they're happening, and I don't think some of these areas are hit on in some of these videos. So I think it's important for us to think about this stuff, and I'm here to help you. In the meantime, listen, we have some great stuff happening with respect to our character. Here comes Calico, who, by the way, is Latino as well. We do have a substantive character. He did not change his identity. He's always been the Calico, Hector Gill. And we want you to learn about him, all right? So if you like a character who is Latino, who's set in the Bronx, here in New York City, I think you're going to love him. And again, it doesn't matter if you're Latino or not. You could be anything under the sun. We appreciate your support because we're not putting the character out there just because he's Latino. We're putting it out there because there's a deep substantive story here, and that is that the Calico goes after people who abuse and kill animals. All right, so his ethnicity has nothing to do with what he does. All right, so let's tell you about what we have on Hector, and that is Here Comes Calico issue 7. That's coming out. It's launching on Kickstarter. Says September 5th, and the campaign ends on October 5th. Okay, so it's going to be on for a month on Kickstarter. So that is September 5th to the 5th of October. Please sign up today. If you go on Kickstarter, you do a search for Here Comes Calico issue 7. Hit the sign up to be notified, and guess what? On September 5th, you'll get a nice little notification saying, hey, go ahead and back this project. Here Comes Calico issue 7. And if you do, we will be very appreciative because you're helping to fight animal abuse through comics, and that's what we do. We fight animal abuse through comics. So with that, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and remember, keep fighting for animals.